Welcome, everybody. We will sit here for a little bit as people get in here, make sure that everything is working well. Because of the new restrictions in California, I'm going to be technically editing this, or I'm sorry, technically directing this as well. It's just going to be me today operating and doing all the stuff, so bear with me. We should go smoothly from there. Today's webinar is post-production webinar workflow, post-production workflow. Gosh, dang it. This is going to be a good one. If you don't have your pipeline perfected, it would make some sense for you to look at how you produce a video from start to end to make sure you have the best efficiencies, you're doing it in the right order for the best outcome. And that's what this webinar is going to be all about. All right, so let's see here. I am I'm live there. Let's make sure if you're on Facebook or YouTube right now, go to videomaker.com/live, and that's where I'm going to be taking your questions. So if anybody actually has any questions, I'm not going to be seeing them. I'm not going to have them on one of these three screens here to watch on Facebook and on YouTube. You're able to see it there, but if you actually want to ask questions, you'll be able to reach me at videomaker.com/live. So let's see here. Let me go to my channel here on your channel. Content, how about that? Live. Ooh, and I'm live there, so let's go to this here. And so we're here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on YouTube. I see that it's working there. Let me go over to Facebook here. It looks like I'm live there, too. All right. So if you are over there, Facebook, YouTube, go over to videomaker.com/live. So today's going to be a 60-minute webinar. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. I want to make sure this is as engaging as possible. So put any questions related to anything I'm covering in the chat window on videomaker.com/live, and I will try to answer it for you. So let me refresh this page because it looks like I'm not seeing any chat yet. Oh, I got to put my name and stuff in again. Bummer. Whoop, wrong button. Down here, join. And it looks like there's some of you here in the chat. Awesome. Cool. So if you are here, why don't you tell us where you're at? I'd love to know really how many of you are from afar, and that'd be great. And then, yeah, if you have any questions right off the bat, put them in there, and I will try to tailor the information that I produced today and show you to direct it towards that question and try to cover it as well as possible. But like I said, if you don't know your pipeline, if you don't have your pipeline, and what I mean by pipeline, your workflow from start to end in post-production, if you don't have that down, you don't have a process, you're going to want to pay attention because perfecting that will save you a lot of time, and it will make a better quality final outcome. So with that said, I'm going to, let's see here. I'm the multimedia editor here at Videomaker. I am instructing you today. This is a presentation I've done quite a few times. I know my stuff here, so we should be well covered in all of that. Today we're going to be talking about organization, asset management, video and audio workflow, and then finally delivery. We're going to be grinding into each one of those. It's going to be a PowerPoint presentation. I have about 40 plus slides or so, so we should be filling the full hour and go from there. Let me look at the chat here, see if there's anything I can address, and then I'll get started. If you're talking about, if you've never been on this site before and you don't know what we do, we pretty much teach people how to make better video. So if you want to make better video, regardless if it's for a narrative film or for some corporate video or for social media, we have articles and videos about everything about how to make better video as well. We cover all of the equipment that you might use within that, having buyer's guides and reviews and the like. Videomaker's been around since 1986, so we've been pretty really important in this category, in this space, and really people have grown up on Videomaker. I know I did. So yeah, we'll go from there. So one little marketing plug, and then I will get started into the actual presentation. Our next webinar is in January of 2021. Woohoo, 21. And it's going to be green screen. So, you know, if you want to know the basics of green screen, how to pull a good key, I will be doing demonstrations. This is one of the more hands-on webinars that we do. And you can go to videomaker.com/webinars if you want to read more about it, see what other webinars we have. As well, we have virtual events that are going to be happening once a quarter in the new year. Actually, might have more than that. I'm not quite sure, but go to videomaker.com. I'm sorry, go to videomakerevents.com, and you can go check out those, get signed up for them and everything. And those usually are a little different than these webinars. And we have presenters from outside of VideoMaker covering the content that we cover in a more higher level than how deeply we drive into this, although everybody ends up doing about an hour presentation. So they are really robust and full of information. So that's videomakerevents.com, or if you want to look at the other webinars, that is videomaker.com/webinars. If you want to see this recording after we're done, you need to be a Plus member. So videomaker.com, we have a membership, and your Plus membership is really not terribly expensive, and you'll have access to all of our past webinars as well as this one once I'm completed with it. And you'll be able to watch that along with, I think we have like over 400 instructional videos on video production. So, and they're all really awesome. I have made a lot of them, and I think they're really worthy to watch and will make your product better if you watch them. Okay, so with that said, let's get on to the presentation. I'm going to switch myself here and go from there. Let's see if anybody's having any issues. I am broadcasting using Vimeo. That's how we're able to go to Facebook, YouTube, and then I embed the video on VideoMaker, and that's how we're here. And this makes it just a lot easier to have everybody go to one place. Plus, of course, we want you to go to our website. We have lots of awesome stuff there. You're going to discover it all. Okay, so let me go into my presentation here and we will get going. So this is post-production workflow presented by the editors of VideoMaker. That includes myself and others that are watching this but outside of this room, and will be supporting me if I need any help. Today we're going to cover getting organized, preparing your assets, video workflow, audio workflow, and then delivery. And this is so important. This stuff is for getting your work done as timely as possible, and with the without having your process hold you back. So you will be able to meet your most potential if you really hone and make your workflow consistent when you're doing work. This is something that I kind of took for granted working at a TV station. And what's the deal here? Okay, there's me. We had a workflow that was just kind of built into the process. And so I learned that because it was just how the station worked. But what I didn't know is that that was quite unique to how we worked. And so looking at how you do your jobs, what kind of video you're making, all of the different parts, meaning your tools and all the rest, and how you're working with other people, your software, you want to perfect that workflow because it's going to allow you to know exactly what's next, when to do things so you're not doing things and then redoing them, and then also making sure that we have some stuff in here that's going to help you with your editing system working either more efficiently or whatnot through a lot of this input here. Oh, what my experience is? Yeah, I've been, see here, I've been working in the industry since 2006, and I worked at a TV station for about 10 years. I started off as a producer director, just writing and producing commercials, local and regional commercials. Then I became the manager of the department, and then I became the creative services manager for the station. So I handled all the promotions for the news, for all the episodic and syndicated programming, and then also ran the commercial production department there as well. And then I was also sidelining writing for VideoMaker, doing equipment reviews and whatnot. I've always been an equipment nut. And then I came to VideoMaker in 2015, maybe 16. I don't know. And started off just being the producer of all of the online content for the paywall. And then I was already doing reviews before, and we decided to take the reviews all internally. And so I was doing all of our reviews, making all of our video content for YouTube as well as the paywall. And now I do that. I do and run our webinars, our workshops, all of our educational content that's in person and me in camera, along with all those other things. Yeah, I'm producing a lot of content right now. I'm in the middle of producing 2 different videos. Yeah, I'm mostly the one-man crew around here. We do have others that produce video, but more sparingly, whereas it's my only job. I am the full-time video content creator for VideoMaker. So with that said, let's get on. Hopefully you care about who I am or what I do, but not as much as this information. Why is this not working the same way? Okay, here we go. First slide. So folder structure. Now, when you're dealing with a lot of files, you want to make sure you're organized. It's very tempting to just throw files in, but once you have MVI-273451, what are you going to know what that is? Make sure you use folders if you're not capturing metadata on your footage itself. And this is going to help not only yourself find those assets that you need throughout the process, but also if anybody else ever has to be a part of the project, you're going to be able to get them. They're going to be able to figure it out where all the content is relatively quickly. I like to make sure to be clear with your naming protocols and consistent. Really consistency is going to be the key for the long view. So if you're doing the work for 3 years, someone else takes over, they're going to know that all that work for 3 years is all going to be organized that same way. It's just going to be helpful through the process. But like I said, for communicating to others that are working in your on your project, it's going to be definitely especially helpful there. Okay, so there's, you might spend a lot of money and time capturing the images. So this is on set shooting, looking for locations, paying actors, all that kind of thing. And you have a lot invested in the actual footage. So you want to make sure it's safe. Having just one copy of it is stupid. Don't do that. Make sure that you have a backup. And by backup, I mean throughout the whole process. So while you're shooting, if you can, dump the footage while you're processing. This is what they call a DIT, or on set, they're the ones that are taking the data, getting it onto a hard drive, probably making more than one copy of it. They're able, of course, they do a lot more. They might do on set grading or sending dailies out or whatnot, but that you're going to be getting that data immediately. You're making 2 copies of it. So if your camera can capture 2 copies of the same clip as you record, that's going to help you, because what if that SD card fails? There's some kind of issue. I don't know. SD cards fail for a lot of reasons. And most of the time it's actually user error. But that's easy. We're human. That's what happens. So if you're able to capture the same footage on the same card at the same time, that's fantastic. So this is that idea, but in post-production, right? So we're going to have a local a location for our data. That might be the hard drive sitting on your desk or in your computer itself. An off-site location. Now, this might be that you actually make a copy of it and literally take it somewhere else. And the idea here is if the building burns down and the computer that you are working on is no longer, you have that data off-site somewhere. And then the other is in the cloud. Now, if you're working with a lot of data, really high data rates, this is something that can be somewhat more difficult depending on your bandwidth and the system in which you back it up into the cloud. But it is important. So I have all of the data that I create, not only here on location, which is well over 25 terabytes, probably more on the way of 35 terabytes. And that's just stuff that I'm currently working on, not currently working on, but stuff I've worked on in maybe in the last 12 months or so. That's it. And then we have all of my archives also here and then also off site. So I have 2 copies that way and then a cloud storage as well. So it's just really important to back up your files. And this also, if you have a cloud storage, it's going to be easier to send those files to somebody because they're up in the internet already. So you don't have to push them to the internet and then they have to download them off. You'll be able to just send them the link to download. So it helps speed that up. There's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of programs that can help you add metadata. If you are on a Mac, it's actually a lot easier. And if you're on a PC using something like Adobe Bridge or something like that, will help you. Preparing your assets. So you have to ask yourself, do you need to transcode? So transcoding is changing the video from one format to another. Why you might transcode is to make the footage more edit friendly. This may be necessary to work in some other programs, but like what I've been running into more lately is H.265, which is HVEC. It is a 10-bit format, and it just doesn't play that nice. It's not something, it captures all that data. It's really efficient. High efficiency video codec is what HVEC stands for. And that's really awesome. But really, they don't play very well on a lot of machines. When they're being decoded, well, let's put it this way. I'm working on some right now. I'm working on an iMac Pro that is completely spec'd out. Every single thing is as fast and as big as it can possibly be on the system, and constantly 2 layers of H.265, regardless of the data rate, will crash Premiere for me. So there's sometimes that is just the issue. So you might transcode to deal with that, to make it more edit friendly. Now, so there are 3 different options for your footage. You have your native footage, which is of course what the camera captures. An intermediate codec, which might be something you're transcoding that keeps that same quality as the native, but works better with your edit system. Or proxies for offline editing, which is the idea of making a low resolution, low to data rate version of your footage so that you can edit it with your system. This is something that like you could be editing 8K something that you're going to be producing in 8K on a MacBook Air or like just a really lightweight laptop. And you'll be able to deal with it. Of course, the last step, which would be reuniting that cut with the original native footage, you might need a more beefier computer to do that. But either way, it's very helpful for those that don't want to spend more money on a computer just because they might have a higher resolution or a higher bit depth project that they're working on. Let's see what Kevin wrote here. Yeah, HVAC. I honestly transcode to QuickTime, or I'm sorry, to ProRes whenever I'm having an issue, because you can ProRes will be 10-bit depending on how you output it. I like to do intermediate codec because my computer can handle it, and I use ProRes a lot. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Talking about free editing software, if you want a robust free software, DaVinci Resolve. It's as professional as it gets for free. It's a professional software. You can pay $300 to get the full use all of the features of it, but the free version is quite robust and going to be very helpful for anyone making content. Okay. So native footage. Native footage is footage in the original format. The benefits are no transcoding needed, saves hard drive space because you're not needing to make more than one copy, and no conversion issues. When you're transcoding, sometimes there can be issues. It really just depends on what you're coming from and going to. The dropbacks it might not play nicely or at all on your NLE or editor, and may hinder the creative process because of that stumbling you might have. Native footage can be really easy, lightweight stuff. If you have a camera that shoots like H.264 and, or your phone or something like that, no big deal. Really shouldn't be any big deal to deal with that native footage. But there's also native raw footage that might be a gigabit or greater a second of data. So, if your computer can't handle the throughput of that much data, we're talking about, a gigabit, which is every 8 seconds you're making a gig of data. That's pretty significant. Of course, that's not even the biggest. There's definitely ones that are far greater than that, and that's why you'll need faster hard drives and all the rest to be able to play that kind of data rate as well. Yes, there is a way to make proxy footage if you've already imported it all. It really depends on your program, but you can make all the proxies and then this is how I do it on Premiere, because sometimes I've had that issue where I've started the project and I'm like, oh, I should have transcoded. I have the transcoded footage somewhere else. You don't want to have them in the same place as the other. Make all your footage offline and then relink it to that transcoded footage or that proxy footage. This is kind of the way we used to have to do proxies before there was proxy support. Both Premiere and Final Cut will make proxies for you with relatively easily. I'm quite sure that Resolve does as well, although I've not done it in quite some time. In fact, I haven't, the last version or so I haven't used, so I'm not sure how easy that is. But that's a good way around there. NLE is a non-linear editor, and for most people, that's not a thing anymore. It's just an editor. All editors are non-linear. The idea is a linear editor was when we were going from tape to tape or cutting film or that kind of thing, that you couldn't work in a non-linear fashion. Okay. So let's go to intermediate codec. What is an intermediate codec? It's designed for editing. It's designed to minimize conversion issues. It's suitable to render final exports. That's a really key one there. So the intermediate is you're not going to go back to your native stuff. You're going to the intermediate codec and you're not going back. So the idea is you don't want to lose any quality. Now, the cool thing is if you know your delivery and you don't need to deliver a 12-bit HDR file or whatever it is that you originally shot, and you're delivering an 8-bit and that kind of thing, you can actually, your intermediate codec doesn't have to be as high quality as the thing you shot, but realize that it's as good as it's going to get and you're not going to go any past that. So if you have a lot of coloring you have to do to your footage, not likely you want to downgrade it. But like I said, going say from H.265 native footage to QuickTime ProRes. I'm sorry, I keep saying QuickTime. A ProRes file is a really nice way to do that. I edit on Mac, so ProRes works just perfectly with Macs. They're designed to work with that as native, so you end up having no issues. And there are other codecs for depending on what program you have or whatnot. If you want to know what best to transcode to for intermediate codec, each editor will have a different one. So like if you're using Final Cut, obviously they're going to say ProRes. So if you're a Premiere user or whatever it is, go to Adobe's site, look and see what they recommend for conversion, and they should be able to give you, hey, this will work better than that kind of thing. I know I've had to do that from time to time when using a system that I haven't used. Resolve calls them optimized video. Now, I think, yeah, maybe that would be optimized is the same idea. Optimized sounds, yeah, I guess that's proxy. That makes good sense. Okay, so intermediate codec, designed for editing, designed to minimize conversion issues, suitable for render final exports. When to use them? When your footage isn't supported by your editor of choice or nonlinear editor. If I should change that because NLE is just not a term we have to use anymore. If original footage is too demanding on a system, so if you just aren't able to play a real-time playback of your footage, I would say that's an issue, especially if you're just doing a cut. I don't like drop frames. There's really no reason you should have to deal with them. These are the workarounds to deal with that. I like a frame-by-frame playback because you can actually get the timing and feel of everything. If you can deal with drop frames, cool for you. They make me angry. Common intermediate codecs, DNX HD for Avid, ProRes for Final Cut Pro. And like I said, every editor's got their own intermediate codec that works best for them. So proxies. What is offline editing? This is the idea of proxies. It's transcode native file into low resolution copy, edit using that low resolution copy, then relink to the native files when it comes to the final export. The benefits are, like I said before, you can use a really lightweight computer, or your computer in general won't have as much strain on it because it won't have as much demand. And then the drawbacks are it adds steps to the workflow. If you are inspired by the quality of what the stuff you have. Sometimes that can be, a drawback. If you shot in 8K and you're using a 720 proxy, you're going to be sad. Although the stuff will play back fine and you might have the colors and that kind of stuff, it's going to be all sorts of pixely and stuff. So, just the drawbacks of those. Now, are people that are shooting in 8K really using 720 proxies? Well, they could. I'd imagine if you are in the 8K workflow world, surely your systems are probably a little more able to handle that. So, and I know that like the new NVIDIA RTX GPUs really make it so that at least one stream of 8K playback can be in RAW can happen. But I digress. Really, it's just figure out what your computer can handle, step it back a little bit so you're not right at the edge of what it can handle, because one, that makes a hot computer. Two, it makes a computer that can fail if you're really pushing it at its edge all the time. And really, what you want is to have enough room to be able to continue to work without having the computer slow you down at all in your creative process. So working with RAW, what is a RAW file? It's the data from your sensor before being processed. This is pre-picture style. This is pre-compression. So you're not going to have any of those issues that you have of putting a big data into a small place. This is going to be, so what are the workflow options for RAW files? So you can use a program that supports them natively, which is every major nonlinear, or every major editor. So your Premiere, your Resolve, your Final Cut, your Avid, they're all going to be able to handle these RAW files. And even a lot of the more affordable ones are totally able to handle this now, which is really cool. The issue, of course, is just like how much your system can handle playing them back if they are a high data rate. Just because you can shoot in RAW doesn't mean it's probably it's actually the best for your workflow. If you need a lot of dynamics and you need all that color information from a high bit depth video, awesome, you can have it, but not every one of your shots. Like right now, my shot right here, this is 8-bit. This is, it doesn't need to be, this is in 1080, I could shoot 4K, but we're streaming, so I'm doing 1080 for that reason. But if you aren't delivering in 4K and you don't have a reason to have, the benefit from 4K, being able to scale and move, shift your framing around after the fact. Really, most systems, 1080 is all you need, and you might not need that raw data because you're not shooting a super dynamic shot. The shot I'm right here, it's not going to look any different if I delivered this to you in RAW versus how it is right now, because there isn't a lot in this that needs that. So beware of that when choosing to shoot RAW. Sometimes it's just bloated and will add time to your work, but not improve your work. So make sure it's needed if you're going to use it, because it is an extra step or two. RAW will need to transcode to an intermediate codec after you've made your initial corrections, if your system so needs it, or if you want to do that. Some RAW works better than others, like Red, their R3D is surprisingly lightweight, and a lot of systems have been able to play them for a long time. Especially if you're in the 4K world, if you're in the 8K world, still, it doesn't take a huge super computer to deal with it, which I'm talking about $10,000 plus computers. I really think even a sub $5,000 computer, you're going to be able to deal with 8K Red Code RAW. But then you go to like, let's see here, like Blackmagic RAW it works really well, but it works well in Resolve, maybe not in others. You have your Canon RAW Lite, Cinema DNG. That's a really bloated, because the idea is it's a bunch of single RAW stills that you're stringing together to make videos. So it can be very intensive to do that for a system. So it's not necessarily the most effective RAW that's out there. And there's a lot of RAW, and not all RAW are the same. With Red Code RAW, you can change the ISO after the fact when you change, and so you can do a lot of different things that don't have that same flexibility in all the RAWs. So if you are looking into RAW, make sure you get the type of RAW you want. Not all are equal, but they are all pre-sensor, are all before processing. So video workflow overview. So this is the process. These are the steps that which you want to do: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, so that you don't step on your own feet during the process. So the first step is import prepared footage. Then of course you do your rough cut. Then you go through that and you polish it to make it your fine cut. And then finishing, which is for all of the little details. And you see this timeline that's here. This is so beautiful, just so lined up and everything. If you are well organized through your process, your timeline should be beautiful as well. And if you keep things labeled well and all that kind of thing, anybody can come in and help and fix something if they so need to, if you're not available. And trust me, you just don't know when you're not going to be available. Rough cut could be called the initial cut. Create the rough story from your footage, trim the majority of the fat, complete in narrative flow with many rough edges. Cut may not be perfectly timed, no finalized titles, graphics, effects, may have temporary music and sound effects, and restructuring still may occur. Now, this is, I'm doing an interview that I'm editing right now, and yeah, it's like not only am I reviewing the shot, for the content I want. So I'm now marking up and going, okay, this is what I like this take, or I like this answer, or what have you. And I'm putting them in, and I'm not making any big choices other than I like this, I don't like this, and maybe where it should go in the story, so that you can still have a lot of wiggle room if, say, part of it doesn't belong in the story or what have you. You still have room to help fix edits that maybe would be apparent otherwise, but you're just getting through it. The idea is like, I'm doing the outline for my drawing, and I'm going to get into the details here pretty soon. So the rough cut is just, I got to make this something. Not seeing slides now. Oh shit. Sorry. I didn't mean to swear. I'm glad you guys told me that. Okay. You can tell I'm reading, huh? So rough cut is going to be real important to get down, but without getting too detailed into it. Now, I like to put music in when I'm doing these things, and a lot of times it will help me choose the order of the things I'm putting together. If you're doing, obviously if you're doing a montage or something like that, music's going to be really key, but you're doing shot selection here. And then a lot of times the music I have is just like, how much noise reduction will I need to do to the audio here if there's going to be some music under it? I'm getting a feel for that as I'm going through. It's also like, how do these two clips flow from one another with their music there? If you don't have it there and you're just like, say it's, especially for an interview and it's just going in, you might have, you're trying to, you might have ums or so's or just different things like that are at the beginning of a statement that you might not want, but you're going to leave that in because all you're doing is just getting the main meat of whatever you're trying to do and put it together. Chuck, we didn't miss any slides. I'll show them to you here real quick. Here, I'll just show you guys all quick. You can do screen grabs if you so want. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's caught up. If you are a Plus member, we have a PDF that we can give you of all these slides. If you're not, sorry, this is the only time you're going to get to watch it. Okay, so fine cut. This is, you're going to watch your rough cut and take detailed notes on all the issues. Now, I think it's really important to not have your hand on keyboard and mouse during this process. You might have it to hit the space bar to stop and to rewatch something or to grab time code or whatever. But this is when I really like to take detailed notes of what I want to do and make a list. And it's nice to have it in a linear list just for the sake you start from the beginning to end if that works for you. But the nice thing about this is you're going to be very efficient with applying those edits if you have them all listed and you're just crossing them off instead of continuously looking for something wrong that needs to be fixed. And it's just it's going to get you through the fine cut faster because of this. So this is where you're going to add basic transitions, dissolves, fade to black, that kind of thing. You're going to export for a client review so they can, get an idea of the content that's going to be in it. Now I'm pretty protective with my edits, and I don't like showing them to the client until they're razzle dazzle. But the big thing about that is you're risking it a little bit, because if you did some work on something they didn't want you to work on, you lost that time. So you got to be careful with that. I'm so sorry it took me so long to switch those slides there. Okay. So then the fine cut. So this is when I'm starting to really feel the mood and the experience of the project, right? So dissolve. So if you're dissolving from one scene to another, if you're fading to black, this is when I'm going to start making choices on how close to a statement I'm making, how much lead into a shot, or you're starting to feel pacing. So like if you have to do some kind of establishing shot into your scene, you're getting a feel of the flow and the timing of your edit. And at this point, it's starting to feel like it's getting there. I step in with my fine cut. If I say I'm doing an interview and I shot 2 cameras, which I typically do, a medium and a tight, I'm going in between each statement, going between my medium and tight. And that's mostly so I can watch it all the way through without being distracted by jump cuts. And that's just my own personal, I like doing that. It makes me feel better about the process. It makes me feel like, oh, this is complete. Now I'm just going to cover this stuff up or whatever with B-roll or whatever you need to. You're laying your groundwork here. And then video finishing. So overview of tasks. And this is a process that you're going to do after you've pretty much got the okay to move forward, because spending time on color correction or effects or transitions or titles, that can be very time consuming. So you don't want to go and do any of that work that doesn't need to be done. If you have a scene that's going to be cut completely, why would you want to grade it at all? Why would you need to deal with it? Why would you want to create titles for it? Why would you want to create special effects for that scene if it's never going to be used? So that's important. So let's jump in first. So fixing video issues. This is when you're going to stabilize shots using stabilized software, fixing uneven shots like rotation, using rotation or getting them matched up, and covering up mistakes such as a boom in the shot or something like that. This is, I like to go and try to smooth out my, the audio going in and out of scenes or out of even cuts, just so that there aren't like cuts in the middle of a statement. Interviews, a lot of people go, and then say their first word as part of that. And so you'll have to fade into that statement. And so it doesn't, you don't hear the cut, because that's the last thing you want a viewer to be, is aware of your edit at all. They want to be able to just get the content, get the communication, and do something with it. You don't want them to be aware of the cut unless that's beneficial to your story. Color correction. This is when you're going to do your primary color correction, adjusting the entire image, luma and chroma, matching shots using a master shot. This is really important when doing any color correction. Find that one shot that you're going to use as your epithesis of what you're trying to achieve, and grade each shot to that shot, because you'll get drift otherwise. You'll start getting away from that original idea. Secondary correction. This is when you're isolating a specific part of a shot for correction using masks. You can see here the little girl's got a mask over her head, so maybe we wanted her face to be a little brighter than the background. That makes good sense. And then artistic correction, giving a look to enhance the story. This is, your oh brother, where art thou look, the Matrix look. Now a lot of those I know are not just in color grading, they're in set design and in costume, and in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, it's actually film look. But most looks these days are not written in stone. They're added as layers on your editor. And so the idea of this being the final thing is that you're not going to be working on things. You're not going to be especially doing like secondary color correction, where you're really getting into the nitty gritty on shots and scenes that don't need to be addressed because they're no longer in the piece. So beware of that. That's a really important thing. It can be a lot of wasted time. Unless you have some use for it, like putting it in your demo reel, it's probably best just to move on. Visual effects. This is where you're going to want to do compositing, smoke, fire, lightning, custom transitions, tracking of subjects or of camera movement, keying those movements or anything else, and adding motion graphics if need to. So, same thing. If you're into this area, compositing can be so time consuming. Adding any kind of special effects, tracking, those all can take a good amount of time. And so you want to make sure not to be wasting your time on scenes and shots that are either no longer part of the piece or aren't going to be in the final work. Sorry, I need a little drink there. titles. So this is lower thirds, opening titles, credits, programs. So you can use, the internal graphics generator in a lot of programs. Premiere can import a lot of After Effects projects, so you can actually just change out the words and not have to change all the animation. A lot of this stuff, like Resolve's got a graphic, even 3D text generator within their program. Really, even Final Cut has a really simple but easy, easy and nice to use titler. So you have to go into your After Effects, your motion, those kinds of things to make those titles. Not necessarily, but they do give you a little bit more ease. They give you more ability, like you don't have to get motion blur on a scene. You don't have to add an effect to do that. You can actually just do it to a single layer in, say, After Effects or whatnot. Not seeing any more questions. I'm either doing a good job teaching or you all disappeared. Let's hopefully we can get more questions, maybe, if you all have them. I see this title. We actually use it as an example in quite a few of our presentations, and I like using it for the sake of it's a really bad lower third. Not only is the guy looking outside the frame to the right, so the shot's junk. Why is there a bunch of room behind him? I don't know. And then why is the lower third on the left side and on the right side? Like, it's like titling the building behind him as John Wales. So, this lower third here, easily done in any kind of editor. I think most editors would be able to do something simple like this. It'd be more of the animation of it if you wanted to animate it. That might be outside of a regular editor and get into like After Effects and motion and stuff like that. So planning a video workflow, there are three options. There's a single software, which is like Resolve, that has, its audio, it's got its editor, it's got its color, it's got its titler all in the same program. So you're not closing the program to go into another one. It's just another tab. That's the same kind of experience that Adobe wants, but Adobe does it kind of in a round tripping way, except for it's their proprietary round tripping. So the stuff actually plays nice, bringing it in. You don't have to save it as some kind of open source process. And then linear, which it can be the easiest, which is just starting from the beginning, going to the end, and not having to go outside of any other program. But round tripping tends to be the typical process for anything that is even somewhat complex. Outside of being maybe in Resolve, every other editor has other programs they want you to use to help support that, so that that one program can be as strong as it can at whatever it does. Master shot. The master shot is a shot that you want everything to match. And the idea there is that you're matching your grade to that master shot, because when doing a grade, you can have your scopes up and you could be making choices and that kind of thing, but you'll start to drift from that first idea. And the goal is to have consistency with your color, whatever that is in your ability, but that you have a consistent color grade. You don't want skin to all of a sudden look different in the next shot. You don't want the color of the vehicle in the background all of a sudden to be more vibrant on another shot. So the idea is to have a shot that's indicative of all the content you're going to be covering. So maybe if you have skin tones and you needed to worry about that, have that in there. And it's to white balance. It's all of those things, the amount of contrast, where your white and black levels are at, where your shadows, midtones, and highlights, all those things are all going to be things that you want to match to this master shot, so that you can have a easier time having a grade across all of your work. Okay. And then looks like here we have another question. So I'm getting some editor questions. I use Premiere. I choose Premiere. If I had to pay for an editor, I'd use Final Cut because it's $300, and I actually really like the way the magnetic timeline works for a lot of the work I do, but it wouldn't work for everyone. Resolve is fantastic if you want to get into. I mean, the thing is they're adding color and effects in Resolve is all node based rather than stacking effects. And so that's a little bit different to get your mind wrapped around, but it's awesome once you get the hang of it. I would probably use it if I was doing a lot of color. But a lot of the work I end up doing is I try to shoot right in the camera, and then I just want to edit it because I don't have a lot of time for my productions. But that really depends on what you're using and what your budgets are. Obviously, you're paying every month for Premiere or for any Adobe product, whereas if you buy Final Cut, it's $300. If you buy DaVinci, the full version, it's $300, no more. And like with Final Cut, since they've gone to Final Cut 10, it's like 8 years of free updates, which is crazy. And same thing with Resolve. Once you buy Resolve, they give you the updates pretty included there. Is Vegas any good? Yeah, Vegas is awesome. No longer owned by Sony. It's now owned by Magix. Still a solid program, going to be affordable. I have done a review of it a few versions ago. Didn't have any issues with it. I really, honestly, the reason why I use Premiere is because I use After Effects and Audition and Photoshop and Illustrator, and I'd probably be using those anyway. So it's just easier to use all of the same suite. But if I wasn't if I was more of a specialist than a generalist, I wouldn't have the need to have that many programs. What is the example of a linear workflow? Just using Premiere from the beginning to the end. You do all of your audio work there. You do all your titling. You do all your graphics. You do your cut there. You do your audio sweetening there. You do everything, your color, everything as part of the process from start to finish, all in one program. Or the idea of going from one program to the next and not going back to anyone you've already used. So a linear process that I use at the TV station, we did a lot of motion graphics. In fact, we used Premiere really as just a sequencer to sequence our audio and to make our cut. That's it. Everything else was done in After Effects. Our grade was done in After Effects, all the timing of everything else. And so we never went back. We did our final render out of After Effects using Media Encoder. And so we never went back. So linear is start a program, go to the next program, go to the next program, finish. And you're not going back to any of those programs that you used in the past. And then there's also just, one program that might do it all. And that's the idea of a linear as well, is just staying in one. If I had to choose Resolve or Final Cut, I'd choose Final Cut, but that's because I'm a lot more familiar with it. When you have spent 15 years or whatever, I've been editing using, I started out on Final Cut, Final Cut 1, I think, and Premiere 1 back in 93, 94 maybe. Used those. I used Final Cut in college because that's what our lab was, and I had a Mac at home. Then once I graduated from college, I realized I have no money, so I can't really own Macs. And so I went back to PC, and luckily the work I was at, we all used PC as well. And so at that point we had to switch to Premiere because Final Cut's not available on anything but Mac. And I've been Premiere ever since, even though now I use a Mac to edit with Premiere. And the big thing is I just don't want to spend the time to learn as much as I know about Premiere with other editors. And it's honestly just a sanity thing for where's this tool. If I knew where all those tools were and I was very ubiquitous with my editors, I don't know if I'd say any of them are better than the others. They're just going to suit different people differently. Like I really love doing screen records on Final Cut because the magnetic timeline makes it really easy to get rid of bad takes, and that I tend to produce more linear anyway. So it just ends up making it so I can edit really quickly. I've heard that from a lot of people, is that if you're doing simple edits, that Final Cut's actually a really robust at that and will help you do those quick cuts a lot faster. But it's not usually as adapted. The amount of Final Cut Pro users are far fewer than there used to be, and there's definitely a lot more in Resolve and Premiere, really. And like Avid is one of those things. If you work at a place that is Avid, you're going to use Avid. Avid tends to be a little more not as flexible as others. Like you can't just throw media at it and start going. You got to know what you have, which hopefully you do. So it shouldn't be too much of a roadblock, but it is kind of a stumbling block when you're first starting or you're trying to learn editing in general. Going into Avid is going to be like, oh my goodness, I need to know what does 24p mean? What does 21 60. I don't know what these are, you know, so you got to know those things. Vegas Pro, Vegas, they're all the same, owned by Magix now. Sony sold it to them. Yes, a notch filter. I got a little more slides here. I'm going to keep on going. Notch filter will help you get rid of low rumble, or I would do like let's see here. It's either a high pass or a low pass. One of the two. I think it's a high pass. Makes it so the high stays and the low goes away. But yeah, probably a good way to get rid of it. Okay, so let's talk about single software workflow. Perform all aspects of the post-production in the same program. So this is single software. This is what I'm talking about with Premiere. Sorry, I was confusing you guys with Linear. May require transcoding, export deliveries directly out of it. The benefit, simple workflow. It's all together. Drawbacks, not taking advantage of ideal tools for specific tasks because there might be a better tool to do it in another program. You're just going to get it done as best as you can in that program. And it might be good enough. It might not be. Linear workflow. Use various programs to move through video tasks without going back. Convert RAW to intermediate codec in Resolve, edit in Premiere, export timeline into After Effects, render final deliveries from After Effects. Benefits, use the strengths of all the programs. Drawbacks, more complex than the single software, and you need to do a little thought there because you don't want you just can't be jumping around. So that's the idea of really following this workflow of rough cut, fine cut, and finishing, is that those things are going to need to be done in that order. Otherwise, you're going to have to go backwards and go round trip back to a program that you were using prior. Round tripping, using primary software for edit until picture lock. Use other software for specific tasks. Bring assets back into your primary editor. Common tasks like visual effects, motion graphics, and color correction. So here's a good example. Primary edit was on, say, Premiere. Then we went to do our color correction in Resolve. And then we went back to Premiere to finish our editing. And then we export from there. I don't know why you do that, being that that Resolve now has a lot more editing process, but I know a lot of people really love doing the color in Resolve because the nodes do make it a lot easier to do a secondary grade, and Resolve was really foundationally a color program. So adding all the other parts of it, like the editor and the titler and the audio part of it, all have been added after the fact, but they are all in one program. So single vendor round tripping, which would be like Adobe using their dynamic link. So you can create a graphic in After Effects and bring it into Premiere and change stuff there. The better idea would be starting off with bringing in your edit into After Effects, doing all your motion graphics and everything, and then bringing that back into Premiere. Multiple vendor would be using editing decision lists. Common types are XML or AAF. And this is pretty much the idea that you are just saying, I mean, this is where cuts are. They're at this time, and here's the duration of that clip. These are the types of things that come out when you do an XML or AAF. You're not going to have if you did any color grading or any plugins or any of that kind of stuff, it's not going to be able to transfer over. So it's just that communication there. This is really, these are like, think of these as like the open source that you can open with another program and use them when you're using something proprietary otherwise. Yes, Isotope RX, they have RX 8 now. I love it, but the program is expensive. I think it's starts at like $400 and go, like the full version's like $1,000 or $1,200, but it's super awesome. You can remove reverb or room noise. You can do denoising, vocal denoising, which is different than other things. You can get really, really surgical with your edit of your audio. I use RX on all of my audio to do pretty much all of my noise reduction for dialogue and anything like that. And then like in this room, it's a big square. You might be able to hear there's a little bit of an echo in this room. So I'm always using their reverb removal tool, which is really quite cool. It's really just kind of a noise gate, but that learns the reflection length and then removes it from there. How do you save completed projects? So Final Cut Pro, the reason why it's so big is you actually are saving the video files within your actual project. So you can change the settings so that it just imports them and doesn't encode them for the Final Cut wants you to have the best experience. So they're wanting to transcode for you right off the bat, right? And then you can actually decide to either save those files within the actual program file or outside of it, which is what I prefer, because then you don't have to have two copies of the files and you don't have this big bloated project file. No, well, so linear would be if you did your audio. So this is the process that I used to do for at the TV station for making commercials. We do our cut, we do our sequencing of our audio, we do our sweetening of all of our audio, individual tracks in just a single mono tracks or stereo tracks in Audition, but then we'd output the final audio, all of it together as a single wave file so that it wouldn't be all these crazy stacks in After Effects. And we mastered that file using Audition. Now, Audition, the nice thing is like in Premiere, you can right click on it, go open in Audition. And as soon as you save that file out of Audition, it updates in Premiere. Now you can do this by making them offline and then just choosing a new file. This is how I did it for a long time before it just automatically did it for you, but it's nice that it does it because it creates a new file. So not only do you have your original, but you have your changed file, and your changed file is now placed where it needs to be. And so, the idea is more of you're not going, round tripping is going back to a program after you've been to it once. Linear would be not doing that, would be just using a program, moving the next program, and then the next program and onward. You wouldn't be going back at any time. Okay. Audio workflow. Let's see what we're doing on time here. Oh, crap. Okay, I'm going to just really run through this. I'm going to have some time for questions, so I'm not going to look at that for a second. So audio workflow for overview, dialogue, sound effects, music, finishing. Is it time for audio? Once picture lock is preferred. Color correction is not necessary to do that. And visual effects eventually. I like to do it audio after my visual effects because a lot of times I might be doing sound effects and working and sequencing my audio with the movement of titles and special effects and all that kind of stuff. But that might not work for everybody. Just knowing your final output is really helpful there. Dialogue, clip corrections. So this is for inserting ADR, removing unwanted sounds, reducing noise, normalizing the volume, compressing if necessary, especially for voiceover or narration, EQ, transitions to bridge the issues between audio clips. And a lot of the times the transitions might be a sound effect. Sometimes it might be bringing the noise from one channel or from the prior track and feathering it into the next one so that you don't hear the cut and the difference between the two files. Sometimes you're EQing to match the two audio. Sometimes you're doing it to sweeten the audio. Sometimes you're doing it to get rid of an unwanted noise like a cricket or some kind of hum like from a refrigerator or something like that. Sound effects. There's hard effects, which are single sounds placed exactly on action. Foley, which is performed actions with the sync perfectly. The good example of Foley is using a piece of celery and breaking it for the sound of someone breaking their leg, and it works really well. Ambience, layers to add to the feel of a scene. Being too sterile will make people go, this is not feel as reality. So there's always a little bit of ambience that's in there. Sound design, which is going to be layers of sound to heighten on-screen actions. And then production elements is like whooshes and swooshes, which can also be transitions. Music, find the right music, attain rights if necessary, mix in the music with other audio. There's really no way to get around having rights to the music. So make sure to find music either that you can use for free or obtain the rights and pay for them. YouTube's really quick at going, hey, you don't have that right to do that, or here's the money to the person that wrote that for your whole video. And you just don't want to be doing that because say you got something that went viral and all the money would then go to the music creator, not to you who maybe made a video and worked really hard on it. Audio finishing, bringing mixed file into editing or finishing software. Can export stems if required, and I would separate them as dialogue, music, and sound effects if you're exporting them as stems. And this is, so say you're doing a lot of sequencing and mixing and stuff in an audio editor, you can export the stems so that they're a lot easier and just completed, ready to drop right into your edit to sequences as easy as possible. Planning an audio workflow. So same idea, single software versus round tripping. So round tripping would be export your sound from your initial edit, work in an audio program, export, mix down, or stems back into the editor. Single vendor would be Adobe Dynamic Link. Multiple vendor would be using OMF files. So this would be doing all that stuff and then trying to bring that OMF into your editor. Delivery overview, exporting, conversion for various destinations. So this is really key. I would know this at the very beginning. Where are your destinations? Because they're going to help you make choices throughout your process of what to and what not to do. If your final video is just going to be online and viewed on phones, shooting it in 8K RAW might not be the best choice. But if you are presenting in a theater, man, you're going to want to make sure it looks as awesome as possible. And of course is delivered in the type of file that they need. Final destination determines the best choice. This is going to help you through that. There's 3 important factors, which is codec, containers, and bitrate. So codecs are used to encode and decode video and audio. Containers are used to hold, compress data, and more. Hey, screen grab this page here if you can, because this little graphic helps me every time I have to think about what is a codec and what is a container. It's really easy to see in this diagram. So bitrate, how much data is used per second to encode and decode? Primary factor that determines file size, right? So if you have a higher bit rate, the file is going to get bigger. If your compression is higher quality, the file is going to get bigger. On all of these, if you look, if the file size, if it's larger, obviously it's bigger. Resolution, file's going to get bigger the higher resolution. The more the frames, the higher the data rate, the bit rate. It's okay to start with presets, and the result here is a high quality in this graphic. In this case, we would be doing this. This would be trying to, make a high quality video there. Some of these are here. This is a smaller file size. So you'd lower the bit rate, you'd lower the quality, meaning adding more compression, and it would create a smaller file size. Now, if you want to have a manageable file size, maybe you lower the quality of the video by adding more compression, you up the resolution, but this would make a similar file size. And then high quality, low resolution. So if you are working in standard definition, and I feel sorry for you if you are, this would be a good way to get there. And then high frame rate, is an issue there, right? So if you're shooting 24 frames a second and that's your project and you're going to be doing some 120 frames in there, when you shoot that, it's going to be shooting 120 frames in a second. So that means it's going to be, 5 times more frames in 1 second. So your data rate is going to be 5 times greater because there's 5 times more frames. So be aware of that you might have to counter something else to deal with that larger data rate. And so here's high quality, so just less compression, lower frame rate, and everything else is just middle of the line. All right, so that's that. That's the presentation. We'll get back to my face here, and I'll answer any of your questions that we might have come up. Man, I got through all that in 6 minutes. Awesome. Okay, let me look at the things here. We're going to take a quick silent break here, and I'm going to look at all your questions. Let me put my glasses on so I can read them. How much free space do you recommend on a video editing software? I always think 20%, and that's true for everything you do with your computer. If you keep 20% of your OS hard drive or any hard drive you're working off of, it gives enough space to have temporary files go there, get written there, deleted, and that kind of thing. And it'll make it so that your editing process and your experience won't be affected. 20%. Some people say 30, sometimes 15. I say 20. That's what I always go by. And almost always, if I'm having a problem with my editor and I'm not dealing with some kind of weird footage, a lot of times it's because I didn't pay attention to how much space I had on the drive, and it's just not wanting to function properly because it needs a little room to move. I mean, think about, if you park your car in a parking space, how much space do you need to get out of that parking space? Same kind of idea. I assume you save all on external drive. How much free space do you keep working on your working machine? That's what I said there. I do edit off an external drive, although if you're working with really high data rate footage, high resolution footage, you're going to need to work on a fast drive. A lot of times your operating system is going to be your fastest drive just because it's connected directly to the computer, not using some kind of external connection. Luckily with USB-C, you have a lot faster data rates. I use Thunderbolt on ours because I am sometimes throughputting some really high data rate footage, as well as I don't want to be waiting to move a terabyte from here to there. I bought a thumb drive that was 64 gigs when thumb drives first started, and I was like, this is so awesome. I can keep everything I want in here. And the problem was to transfer data onto that thing took a whole day to put 64 gigs on it. And so it was really unusable because even offloading it, same thing, just as slow. So beware of of the connection that you have with your data and how fast that is, because that's going to be how long you're waiting to either offload or to pull the data from. Let's see here. I have someone saying, can you recommend any resources for filmmakers, documentaries outside that are looking to do color correction? Yeah. I've used Fiverr, and it's somewhat of a roll of the dice when you first start a relationship, but that's true with any producer that you start to work with. So I would be, I've used it for special effects and sound effects and that kind of thing. Ask to look at their work, have a good dialogue with them before you start the project, make sure you understand all of the costs that are involved. And then the other thing is make sure your communication is as good as possible to that person, because if your communication is no good, how are they going to know when they got it correct or the way they want it, the way you want it? Yeah, OWC Radio, sure, can totally be on your be interviewed or whatever. I'd be happy to. Email me, cmonlux@videomaker.com. Dave, I don't think that YouTube does a good job encoding the footage. So what YouTube does is they take your original source file, whatever you export it as, and then they encode it to be what works best for them. Now they're serving the resolution and all that kind of stuff based on people's bandwidth, but that up to 4K, there's actually a cap in the file size. A fun trick I've heard recently is just output your stuff as 8K regardless of what you shot it in, and there's no limit on the file size that you can upload to YouTube, so you can have something that's really high data rate and that it's going to show that so that YouTube, when they do their encoding, you're at least giving them something that's really high quality to encode from. But yeah, there's a lot of complaints and a lot to be grown for YouTube. I always think of like the slow-mo guys or any other place. Actually, recently it was Smarter Every Day. It was a show they were showing a pecan tree being shook to get the nuts out of the tree. And all of the leaves, the small leaves, they were just all sorts of pixely because there was just so much detail in the shot, and YouTube just boofed it. It just looked horrible. So, those small, fine details, if you need them, beware and try to serve to YouTube what they're going to encode to. So YouTube has what they're going to compress it to, so they don't have to re-encode it if you give it to them the way they want. And I believe that's the best way to do it, no matter where you're delivering it to. If you're delivering a TV, a TV show to a TV station or whatever it is, or a commercial, find out what they want and give them that, because that's going to give you your best chance of being right. I can't tell you where your presets for Premiere Pro are, though. If you go, I'm not sure if you're on a PC or not. There's a lot of really great Adobe forums and Adobe employees that are there. They should be able to tell you that. If not, Google it. You'll find what you need. I work off my external because I'm working on Thunderbolt, which my Thunderbolt transfer data rate, well, at least my drives, my RAIDs that I'm working off can do up to 3 or 3,600 megabytes a second, so 3.4 gigabytes a second. So I don't worry about it. But if your external drive and the what you're using, the interface, so if it's USB or Thunderbolt or whatever way you're getting into your computer, if that process isn't fast enough to play the footage back natively, you're going to want to put it on your OS driver internally on your computer, so you can edit it off there and then archive it once you're done. Chris, I do not believe that you're going to be able to just open your Premiere files in Final Cut. What you likely would have needed to do is save those as a MXF file or something like that, that Final Cut does accept, and then bring it in there. But realize you're going to lose a lot of that stuff that doesn't work the same way in Final Cut. So really you're going to have your timing of your cuts and what clips exist where, and that's about it. Maybe the sequencing of your audio or something like that. Oh, looks like someone said that they've had some chance doing that with that website, so you might try that. I have not had any luck doing this for other types of migration. However, I've never had to migrate from Premiere to Final Cut. So I'm not sure how easy that is, but I do know that a lot of programs, either if you don't have their pro version, won't allow you to export those types of non-proprietary project files. But making sure you know what the program that you're moving to will accept, and then seeing if you can export your project as that in the program you're using, regardless of what you're coming from and going to, is going to be your best bet. Send to X. It looks like there's that too. That sounds more likely that you have an app that'll be able to migrate it for you. But I haven't used anything like that, so I can't recommend any. Okay, so that's it for my presentation today. Let me give you guys a little heads up. Make sure to check out our next webinar. It'll be free just like this one while we're going. And if you're a Plus member, you'll be able to watch it afterwards. In fact, if you're a Plus member, you can watch last year's version, last year's presentation. That's on the 20th of January, 2021. You can read the description for it and all of our rest at videomaker.com/webinars. And then if you want to go to our virtual event, which have been very awesome, we've done 3 of them so far. And like, I'm very scholastic when it comes to video production. I'm always having to learn new stuff, how things operate and all that kind of stuff. And at every one of these presentations, I've learned something, and that says a lot. I go to all the trade shows and learn all the newest stuff, and it's hardly ever that I'm like, oh, that's how that works. I'm doing that throughout, but these presentations are so good that even me, that is always trying to educate myself on the newer things, that I was being blown away by some of the takeaways. So really awesome. That's videomakerevents.com. Go there. You can get signed up for the next one and check out maybe even videos of the last ones. So without further ado, thank you all so much for coming. I'm glad you stayed the extra 10 or 11 minutes here. If you all would like to sign up for Plus membership, it's a super great value. And like I said, 400 videos on everything you could possibly think of, from beginner to advanced, from making money to color correction. I mean, we have just really, really in-depth courses there that are going to be things really we made a lot of these presentations from. So go check it out. I think it's like $10 a month or something like that. I mean, super cheap, really affordable, and you'll have all of our resources at your fingertips to deal with any problems that you might have. And it's just ripe with lots of resources. So thank you all for tuning in. I've been Chris Monlux from Videomaker, and until next time, keep doing the hard work.